It was never supposed to be a risky business. When the federal government decided to stimulate the economy with billions of dollars for building the education revolution projects, small builders were told it would rescue them from the jaws of the financial crisis. But instead of heralding an economic revolution, the BER has wreaked havoc, destroying hundreds of builders and subcontractors across New South Wales, bringing financial ruin. Amid so much despair and misfortune, somehow the middleman has profited. There are now allegations of mismanagement and exploitation, and the finger is pointing not at the government, but at the project managers entrusted with so much taxpayer money. Cara Meldrum-Hanna has part one of this investigation.
It's midday at this building site on Sydney's lower North Shore, and concreter Torek Isaac is busy at work.
Not many, probably 3 or 4 trucks today.
It's a regular day on site, until a ghost from the past appears, paying a visit to an old colleague.
Hello, John Paul. Hello. What's this, November?
It is.
How you going? How you been? You know, just that time of year again where we start to think about it. And
Torek Isaac and engineer Jean-Paul Agabi may not work together anymore, but they still have one thing in common.
it was actually exactly this time last year. It was the 27th. Yeah. What's the date today?
22nd today?
It was about the 22nd or 27th of November.
Yeah, roughly around now. It happened.
Yeah, exactly right. 4 or 5 weeks before Christmas.
Yeah.
They are both victims of the federal government's Building the Education Revolution program, a multi-billion-dollar program introduced in late 2009 and overseen by the former New South Wales Labor government.
I'm paying off concrete for a job that had nothing to do with me, for the government.
Correct.
I'm paying off concrete and steel for those schools, which have nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
So I really don't know.
This desperate search for answers started exactly 1 year ago, when the small building company they were working for, Project Kendall, went bust, carrying out around $8 million worth of taxpayer-funded BER projects at 7 Catholic schools across Sydney's eastern suburbs. How much were you owed?
At the end of the day, we'll owe just over $1 million.
How much money?
Oh, it's just under $300,000, $285,000. The advice from my accountant was, you're not going to make it, you're not going to pull through this. He goes, just get yourself ready to wind up your company.
Remarkably, Torek Isaac managed to stay afloat, but Jean-Paul Agabi wasn't so lucky. He lost his entire engineering business.
Thanks to government work and incompetence of bovis lend-lease.
What if it was put to you that they just spotted a fantastic business opportunity? The government virtually allowed them to walk in there and do that?
Well, again, there's ethics and morals whenever you're engaging in contracts, especially government contracts, and the intent on doing these sorts of work is to keep the economy moving and basically not putting all the putting all the money in the pockets of one company.
Who is responsible here?
Definitely Bovis. 100% in my mind, Bovis lend-lease.
Bovis lend-lease on the Catholic schools in particular, and particularly the Sydney Archdiocese, something seems to be very, very crook in the state of Denmark, as they say.
To understand how these New South Wales builders could be burnt by what was meant to be a safe government stimulus program, overseen by one of Australia's biggest and best project managers, you need to turn back the clock to the very beginning.
Providing work for tradies, sparkies, chippies, builders, right across the Australian economy.
It sounded great in theory. Billions of dollars poured into New South Wales, flooding the construction market. And the New South Wales government decided it would all be managed by a select group of project managers. The giants of the construction industry took over.
Lend-lease, Hanson Yuncken, Multiplex, Brookfield, these are publicly listed companies with turnovers in the billions of dollars.
With handsome management fees and lucrative potential profits from government work up for grabs, Bovis Lend-Lease was one such company that threw its hand up, winning billions of dollars worth of BER projects to tender out and manage. It awarded 7 Catholic school projects to this man, Aaron Kendall, the director of the now defunct small building company, Project Kendall. If you had your time over again, what would you do differently?
I never would have signed up for the BER work.
2 years ago, Project Kendall was a flourishing building and interior fit-out company, producing top-end, high-quality residential work.
It started to dry up. The financial crisis saw a lot of people, even with people with money, decide to stop spending.
Aaron Kendall needed a lifeline. One of his own staff members planted the seed.
He mentioned that he had a brother in Bovis who was, managing and working on projects in the BER, and they were looking for builders, so it was more conversational rather than him sort of pushing me towards it or anything like that.
So it wasn't some sort of inside deal?
No, definitely not.
Aaron Kendall quickly realised that when it came to profit, Bovis Lendlease weren't offering him any favours, driving down his tender price by hundreds of thousands of dollars in a process known as de-scoping. So the more they press you down on price, the more profit they will make?
Yeah, I don't think that they were prepared to compromise their profit at all, really. I think they had basically a borderline, and that was it. And they screwed us down, screwed our subcontractors down, and bled every cent that we had.
When work finally began on site in early 2010, Project Kendall immediately ran into trouble.
We had a skills shortage, we had supply shortage, because the government stimulus package did stimulate a lot of trades, and those trades became scarce and they became expensive, and that basically crucified our margin. So we started going backwards. We were losing money on the jobs.
The project slipped further and further behind schedule. As Project Kendall faltered, subcontractors down the line felt the pinch. They weren't getting paid. Engineer Jean-Paul Agabi watched as his invoices stacked up and his debts grew.
Now, this obviously rang alarm bells for us in the sense that, if someone's not paying you, obviously they've got cash flow problems.
Why not walk away then?
We had too much already committed into the project, and basically we're building, projects for school kids, for primary kids. You can't just walk away from a project.
And we were starting to get to a stage where we were almost begging for our money on a month-to-month basis. I mentioned it to the Bovis representative on site. To
obviously help reduce our exposure there, or to our concerns, that we went to Bovis and notified them on a few occasions, not just myself, other contractors involved with Project Kendall, saying, look, guys, we're not getting paid. You need to do something.
Nothing changed. 730 has obtained a copy of this internal Bovis Lendlease site inspection report, carried out at the Leichhardt Primary School project at the beginning of July 2010. It's a damning record of non-compliance, revealing just how out of their depth Project Kendall was come mid-2010.
Carpenters working on roof trusses with no fall protection. Trip hazards from materials on the scaffold. Non-conformance, tools not tagged. This is very disappointing, and it reflects badly on your site supervision and site discipline.
But it gets worse. 730 has obtained a copy of the administrator's report, completed by Worrell Solvency and Forensic Accountants.
Our preliminary investigation suggests that the company may have been insolvent from at least July 2010 and possibly earlier.
Despite the problems facing Project Kendall, Bovis Lendlease decided to award it 4 more BER projects.
They dived to the bottom of the market, picked the cheapest people they could, and elected to stumble and fumble along the bottom, hope for the best outcome. And they got quite a reasonable outcome. Bovis did, the subbies didn't, the workers didn't. Bovis is laughing.
As the crisis on site grew towards the end of 2010, behind closed doors, the weekly progress meetings between Project Kendall directors and Bovis Lendlease were reaching fever pitch. And Aaron Kendall noticed other small building companies carrying out government stimulus work were also in the same predicament, rotating in and out of Bovis's offices.
We did see other builders there, and we did sort of, not overhear, but we could see the vibe of the meetings as we were walking through. They were all in the same situation. There were being voices raised, pointing fingers, and not a very nice situation.
And even subcontractors like Jean-Paul Agabi took the extraordinary step of going to Bovis's offices for a meeting.
They said, look, talk to Project Kendall, get them to keep going on. I said, guys, you've engaged Project Kendall. You talk to them, you work it out, and you help all the other subbies finish the job and get paid. It's not my responsibility to convince your contractor to keep on the job and keep moving.
Bovis Lendlease, would you describe them as aggressive in their style of project management?
Definitely. They said to us, well, look, if you can't produce this, your contract will be cancelled. If you can't produce this, we'll extend the payment terms, those sorts of things.
But it was at the Paddington site that Aaron Kendall felt the full might of Bovis Lend-Lease.
We were told that they didn't want any bad press from this school, and they wanted to keep it looking good, and had people in the kids in the school were children of people high up in Bovis, so they needed to make a good impression, and it didn't look good with nothing happening on site.
It sounds incredibly unreasonable, demanding that you...
We all thought it was pretty unreasonable. We had to go there and work on Saturday and Sunday to do the work, to pass it over to the school. We had to rip up fencing and import temporary fencing and segregate the site. Made it very difficult.
And on site, subcontractors felt the screws tightening even more.
And we would get calls from Bovis saying, how come you haven't delivered the steelwork? How come you haven't poured the concrete? And we said, guys, things don't move when we don't get paid. Once we get paid, we can start supplying materials again.
Pushed to work harder and faster, reassured that government work was safe work and that payment was just around the corner, subcontractors like Jean-Paul Agabi were encouraged to put everything on the line.
So we invested at a point of around, within a period of 1 month, we invested over $600,000 in structural steelwork and in concrete.
Then, early one Friday morning in November, the phone started to ring, with the news that Project Kendall had gone into voluntary administration. What ran through your mind?
Look, basically my heart sunk and, felt sick in the stomach.
Oh, panic. It was just sheer panic. At that stage, I'd outlaid that much money. I just sort of froze, for hours, just thinking, what am I going to do?
Bovis Lend-Lease refused 730's repeated requests for an interview. Instead, it provided this written response.
Project Kendall was selected following a transparent and open tender process which included independent evaluation of areas such as capacity to deliver and price. We have met our obligations in relation to the contracts with Project Kendall, and we expected Project Kendall to meet their obligations under the contracts they have with their subcontractors. Project Kendall had met their contractual obligations up until the weeks prior to entering into administration.
It was very difficult working for Bovis Lend-Lease. We were not ready to go and work for a company that was such a, hard-lined company that didn't want to consult, didn't want to assist. We weren't prepared for that.
Powerless to salvage the projects, Aaron Kendall was cast adrift, his business destroyed, and suddenly public enemy number one.
I've received a lot of threats and a lot of people angry, missing money and put the blame on me. And I've had a very, uncomfortable time with me and my family, so it's been pretty harrowing. I lost over $500,000 of my own personal money. So I'm now financially ruined because of Bovis Lend-Lease.
Do you wonder where the analysis is of Bovis Lend-Lease? You've been analysed.
That's an interesting point. Yeah, they're just too big.